developed a rich and colourful history at the Rugby World Cup, with the All Blacks having to twice beat the Pricklers to win the Webb Ellis Cup. That rivalry resumes here in Paris this evening as we kick off the 10th edition of rugby's biggest prize, the World Cup. Here's the cross kick. Waiting is Mark Talia. Needs a good pass. Oh, yeah. Hey! Mark Talia, opening try of the World Cup. I don't think so. Jelly Man on the outside. Bruno gets the try. There's a bounce of the ball here. Richie Malone doesn't get it. And the try is scored by Chamonix. That is it. First blood. As the 10th World Cup goes to the host nation, France.
Tēnā koutou katoa, bonjour, welcome into the breakdown. We are officially on the road in Lyon, France after the opening weekend. It's been pretty incredible seeing the local fans get out here. France have been amazing hosts. We have survived the heat, which has been about 34 degrees during match days. But right now, we've got a lot to discuss. All these other nations are putting their hand up and the All Blacks are already under pressure. Mils Mulligina, Jeff Wilson, welcome to France.
Let's take a breath, eh?
Let's
it's time to take a breath. First weekend, Mills is gone. It's done. We've seen all the big teams. There's been big games, big match-ups. Obviously, the All Blacks have got a lot of things to consider now as they start building towards their second game. But the World Cup is on. And the atmosphere, you've seen it across all the stadiums. They're prepared. The host nation are ready. They showed that by playing so well against the All Blacks. The fans are ready. Yeah. You're here in Lyon. You're out in town last night seeing the atmosphere in and around other matches, man. It's fantastic, right?
34 degrees. Is that what it was? It felt like it was 50.
Like 50,
yeah. Didn't it? I mean, it's nice to get our working style suits back on and then be underneath the shade. But you're right. Not the ideal start for the All Blacks, but a lot of other great matches too. There'll be a lot of sort of, I suppose, not sort of soul searching for the ABs, but plenty of colour around town, like we've been seeing. But another great week ahead.
Look, I just want to bring something up straight away. 2 weeks ago, Sir Steve Hansen was on the breakdown live from France in camp with the Wallabies. Now, Mills, he is in camp with the All Blacks for the next 2 weeks in Lyon. What does that say? What is that telling you?
Oh, I think they would have perhaps already preempted this, right? I think it's just a little bit of a moral support for Fozzie and sort of possibly reaffirming what he's actually doing. Having his presence around some of those other guys as well, and some of the things that he would say, that can go a long way into helping him in this sort of situation. You've got to remember, look, they came into this and they would have hopefully had a plan as well, hadn't it not gone right. It hasn't gone their way, the result. But the reality is, once you get to that quarterfinals, which they should make, right? That's when it should really start.
I'm a little bit surprised. The fact coming from one camp to another.
And the same World Cup cycle.
Haven't seen Steve Hansen for quite a while. Obviously, he's been coaching in Japan, and all of a sudden, the last 2 or 3 months, certainly been very, very vocal. You talked about it a couple of weeks ago, the fear of missing out, maybe just wanting to be a part of it, but also he feels as though he can add some value. Now, if he can come into the All Blacks and have 2 or 3 words of wisdom that might give them an edge, then it's great. And they obviously feel as though he can add some value, just like the former players who have been there.
The thing is, right now, the biggest struggle for the All Blacks is keeping their players on the field. They have 4 major injuries right now. Amoni Narawa has gone back to New Zealand. Absolutely devastating news for him. The back injuries ruled him out of his first ever Rugby World Cup. Before it even got started, news confirmed that Ethan Blackadder will come across. He'll be landing on Monday in France. Let's talk about him first. He brings exactly what the All Blacks need, Mills: physicality. That's why he never stays on the field, because he is so intense with everything he does.
Yeah, so you've just talked about guys getting back on the field and staying off the field.
Please stay on the field.
I know, and this is the sort of guy that just throws his body at everything, not just in game, but also at training. And that's perhaps sometimes when he's sort of more vulnerable, he hasn't got the balance right in terms of just pulling back, because he feels good about hitting bodies and hurting people. I think they need it. I think it's probably a little bit of a blessing in disguise. Shannon Fazio's gone down. They were a little bit short, weren't they? And very, very light in the Lucy department. And now, Captain Sam Cane had back spasms. So to bring him back into the fold, into the mix, to bring that sort of energy, having been out, and perhaps motivation for guys, I think that might be possibly possibly, something that just kick-starts this All Black team. Well, hopefully.
Really unfortunate for Sammy Penny-Finau, we must say, because he had been part of that original squad. But, what are the differences between these two players?
But Ethan wasn't fit. I mean, had he been fit for selection, he probably might have been in the squad ahead of Sammy Penny anyway. So the fact that Ethan's gone and played some rugby, it was great footage of his Tasman Markle teammates. The morning of a game, he's preparing to play. No, you're off to the airport to go to France.
He's so like his father, isn't he?
Oh, I tell you, well, the one thing you're going to get, the one thing you're going to get from just like his dad is you're going to get effort. From minute 1 to minute 80, if he can make the 80. But he's going to put it on the line. I think he'll have to come in immediately and he'll have to play. He'll have to get as much rugby under his belt because the All Blacks may need him. But the fact that we're not hearing that Shannon Frizzell is closer is a concern for me, is the fact because we saw, I think, in that first game, just the different element he brings to the All Blacks. I think there'll be some hard conversations now about selection, about what might happen if Shannon Frizzell doesn't recover quickly. All of a sudden, that option of Scott Barrett going to 6, I still think becomes a conversation because size is going to be important. We've seen that. We've seen already the big teams, England, South Africa. We're going to talk about them a little bit later on in the show, exactly what they're going to bring.
Absolutely brilliant to see Brodie Retallick come back and play 11 minutes on the weekend. Yes, it was forced due to injury. He was forced onto the bench, but he's ready and he's available. Tyrell Lomax, a couple of weeks away still, of course, with that quad tear. Shannon Frizzell still unsure when he will return to play. They're hoping that it'll be during the pool matches. Jordie Barrett, it sounds like he could be available for the next test of the Rugby World Cup with his knee. Sam Cane, back spasms. We're hearing that it's not too bad. But Mills, can the All Blacks win the Rugby World Cup? Can they win a really hard quarter-final without their number one team, with those 4 frontliners out injured?
Oh, it's a tough ask when you speak of those guys that are out. Can they win it? There's a bit of time. Okay, there's a bit of time to get some of those players back, and they're in key positions. But also, I think you talk about the physical well-being of these guys, but sort of, I'd like to know sort of where they're at now mentally. You know, they've just come off a comprehensive sort of win from the Springboks in Twickenham. That would have dented their sort of motivation a little bit. They've gone out now and played the French at home. They haven't won that game. It's back-to-back losses. What do they get out of these next few games? And particularly, looking forward, when you go to the quarterfinals, it's about gaining a little bit more momentum, trying to get that momentum back, but also getting a lot of those healthy guys back, so that because it does become that, it now becomes all about that quarter-final.
Why it's important for me is the fact that we'd started to build these great combinations, and all of those combinations, you think about the midfield, you think about the front row, the loose forward trios, all of those combinations are now gone because we've got someone out from all of them. So how hard is it for them to come back in? And we need to elevate our performance collectively as a group. The team we're going to name probably to play Namibia, then on to Italy. If some of these guys aren't fit, it's not the sides that have been successful already this season. So health is probably, to me, the most critical part of the All Blacks campaign right now.
Well, we know the All Blacks have always had this aura about them. International teams have feared playing the All Blacks, but they've really struggled against these top 4 nations in the world over the last 12 months, haven't they? I mean, just the losses to South Africa and France in the last 2 weeks. Of course, we know what happened in the Irish series last year. Do these top teams still fear the All Blacks, Jeff?
Well, look, so much has been talked about the fact the All Blacks have now lost their first pool game in Rugby World Cup history. Look, I don't think that aura has been there for a long time in regards to that. I don't think these teams, Mills, no longer fear playing against the All Blacks because the margins have become so close between these sides. And when you're good enough and talented enough like these two teams, or multiple teams are, and the nature of the way they play, and the fact there's no doubt that the All Blacks have gone through a big changing of the guard in their group. And like you say, teams have created history. So this aura, there's no doubt the respect's still there, Mills, right? The respect of the legacy, the history, all of that around the All Black jersey. But ultimately, these guys are professional athletes. They believe they can go and compete on any given day. So I don't think it's necessarily gone. I just think it's a different phase of the game now. It's just international footy.
Oh, it's more competitive now, isn't it? And results have possibly sort of had this effect on it. I mean, I don't think in the All Black environment, regardless of whether you're succeeding or not, you don't talk about the aura. I mean, there are moments in the game, and that's probably where you're sort of seeing now, where you look across, you're winning a big moment, you can actually see the opposition think far out. There's a little bit of doubt in there. You probably haven't got that now, given those sort of the results. But in terms of the aura, the respect's still there. If anything, this current team at the moment, they've gone through a lot of that adversity. They've gone through those losses, and so it's no different. You talk about those guys that are coming into the environment. The young guys, they won't necessarily feel that expectation because it's something new. This is something new to them. They've come off sort of losses and had to fight their way back in. Where in yesteryear it was all about that. We've had a good part of history behind us. I still believe we've got that. It's just now about that. Like I mentioned before. Mentally, how does that affect, the All Blacks and their motivation going forward now?
I mean, it's all well and good beating teams like Argentina and Australia, but how do you actually get 80-minute performances against these top nations? Because 50, 60-minute performances, they're not good enough, are they?
Well, it has been at times, because beating South Africa in South Africa last year, that was a remarkable performance. That's probably the one 80-minute performance I look at and go, you know what, that was one of those games. What we did is what we can do. Now, there's been a lot of conversation. I've started reading about the fact that the All Blacks can't play for long periods of time. But if we get 20 minutes right, now, just before half-time against France, if we'd nailed a couple of key moments, it would have put them under pressure. Those are the things at the moment are letting the All Blacks down, is when we do get opportunities in big games and there are moments we're not nailing those. And that's the question marks we have to have over performances right now.
So that's concerning.
Well, there's no doubt about that. They'd be concerned about that. If I was playing in that team, I'd be concerned, because ultimately that's not taking the opportunities. And the All Black teams have always been, if we're on for 20 minutes, we can accumulate points very, very quickly. And
Ian Foster said after that match against France that there were a few home truths. Is that what he's talking about, Mills, not being able to finish off all of those opportunities?
That is a big, massive part, but also moving on from not finishing that opportunity. It's almost like, okay, they haven't nailed that, they've gone to the change room, they're on top of them. You're seeing the French tire, but they've almost gone in and put themselves back on under pressure, thinking, oh man, we missed that opportunity, we've got to get ourselves back in the game, play more. And they're not, it just seems like they're not kind of thinking on the bigger picture, whereas teams in the past have gone in and let that go. Let's let it go now. Let's restart again, go back out there and win big moments, and also, focus on those big moments. Not go in and go, oh man, I've lost that battle now. There's a moment that we've kind of lost, and dwell on it. And I sometimes think that's where the All Blacks are at the moment. And then they just keep trying a game plan, keeping it a game plan. Meantime, it's not working. They're not prepared to actually change it, because they've put themselves on so much pressure to say, okay, it becomes tunnel vision. And that's what we're not seeing at the moment. We've got a good team. We've got a team that are clinical when they get themselves in the right place. The skill execution is good, but it's here. Yeah. This is in the communication about it. Our long kicks. I mean, we've got to get to a stage where we have to adapt.
We have to win the mental game.
Yeah.
That's what we have to win. We talk about the top 2 inches. It's constant. That's the one thing at the moment.
How do you grow that?
Well, you've got to have your experience step up. And what we've seen, a number of injuries, guys. There are points, there's some inexperience in the group. So they're going to have to make some adjustments, or they're going to have to come up with a formula to keep themselves on point.
Can I just ask you too, are you missing JK? Are you missing him niggling you across the desk, Jeff?
Sometimes it's quite nice for it not to be constant from Sir John Kirwan.
Well, if you're all sitting there wondering, where is Sir John Kirwan? Him and Carlton Anna are both in Paris, and they were there in France, Stade de France, for that opening match.
Well, KT, I was on the sideline, man. It was just the atmosphere. Like an hour before they were singing, you were upstairs doing the world feed. How was that?
Oh, it was immense. Like, I think we always thought and knew that it was going to be some type of event, but to actually be there and experience it. And hour before kickoff, JK, the crowd's in there singing Allez les Bleus, and it's just something different and unique, as you know, being here. But for you, you've been to a few World Cups. How does this one rank in terms of the atmosphere and how it kicked off on game 1?
I just felt really privileged last night to be on the sideline. I was here when they had the last one. I was still coaching Japan, and rugby just seems to be getting this growth to it, but I just thought the crowd was amazing. They were just partying the whole time, so the atmosphere was amazing. But the heat, man, like the heat, there's no excuses, because both teams have to play in it, but both teams would have suffered, because it was like this blanket, there's this humidity. So, for me, I just think it's a great way to start the tournament. As an All Black fan, I'm not happy, that was a bit hard, but you know, you just got to go, well, we now need to get some rhythm into the quarterfinals, but what a great way to start. Everyone left happy, so it's all good.
I think for the tournament, in terms of the tournament, I think it was a great way to kick it off. As All Black fans, absolutely terrible. For you though, like thinking about the All Blacks and the performance, what was your sort of view on it?
It was really interesting because after the game, everyone said to me, why were they kicking it? And I think it was part of the game plan. I think they were kicking it back and forward, you know, not kicking it out, trying to get those big French forwards to run. And I thought it had worked.
Yep.
End of the first half, I thought they were out on their feet. But then in the second half, we just didn't have any possession. Bit of discipline, I think. The two things that I think the boys will be talking about together, discipline, you know, that was a harsh one, but you know, Will probably just needed to pull out of that, right? So he did have his eyes on the ball, but that's, you know, that's the way it is. And then, you know, I think, what was it, 15-4 or something, the penalty count? Something like that. So you can't play a game like that. And the other thing I think they'll think about is they got a bit of red head on, you know, late. They're just like, let's try and win this. And so there was a few sort of errors in their individual skills under pressure, which I think, you know, they can look at and say, well, what we should have done different. But everyone's a bit worried last night, but I'm not worried at all. I just think, you know, it's going to come down to that one-off game. They have a good game against Italy, though.
But the thing is too, like we've got a lot of heavy hitters out with Geordie Barrett and well, Brody came back late. He was already good to go, and Shannon Frizzell, Lomax. You know, so if we think about in terms that we lost the skip just pre-kickoff, which is another thing they had to get to negotiate. But I mean, as we go into the tournament, I think that's one thing I got out of talking to Fozzie. You have to be good for quite a long amount of time, and I think if you get those guys back, whether it be incrementally or in one hit, then it changes the whole scope, I think, of our team, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. And I think the interesting thing for me is Narero going home. You know, do you bring another loose forward? Do you bring Blackadder over, you know, rather than another winger, eh? They always get rid of us wingers, mate.
always
gone, eh?
You know, this is our last gig doing this because the two wingers were getting punted.
Gone, mate.
Gone.
Bring the front rows in.
But I've been looking forward for not only the All Blacks but the tournament as a whole. What's your thoughts?
Can't wait. I think it's going to ramp up now. So it's just a neat atmosphere. I can't wait.
I think it's about time you go get us a coffee. That's us, isn't it?
Yeah, coffee time.
All right. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Let's go get an espresso. Well, JK doesn't have to be in New Zealand to have espresso about 10 times a day, does he?
He's on tour. That's what he is. He's in France. He's on tour. He's doing it well, as always.
Looking very snazzy. Also, his glasses are getting plenty of attention from all over the world over the last week. Just as much attention as the All Blacks' performances, Mills.
Yeah, pretty stylish, aren't they? Do I need to get some sunnies too? Well, they're not sunnies,
They're not
are they?
sunnies.
Oh,
They're
mate, that's
prescription.
Right, maybe I don't. Yeah.
Oh, OK, well, let's talk about the All Blacks. I mean, you've mentioned the game plan, Mills. We have the best athletes in the world in the All Blacks. We saw glimpses of it, Rico Ioane, Mark Talia on the weekend. I mean, is the game plan right for the athletes that New Zealand has?
I'm going to get into it here because this is the fact that everyone knows the way I'd prefer to see the game played. And I've taken a lot of criticism about teams I don't particularly enjoy watching playing the game.
So the All Blacks play their worst game again?
No,
and the French played their best?
Well, funny enough, no. The problem we've got is that France can play better, and we know that. The problem we've got...
Just not South Africa. They played their best 2 weeks ago.
Well, interestingly enough, they were very, very clinical once against South Africa. And you look at the way that they played the game, it's the nature of it is, for me, we kicked the ball about 38 times. 45 from France. We've seen already across this tournament. What adjustments in our game plan do we need to make? The fact that, is it personnel? Is it where we're playing the game? Is it too high risk? We played a lot of rugby in our own half from time to time. Forced it, you know, and it was unstructured play. Are we in a position where we need to play like that, Mills?
I think there needs to be a lot better balance, and I think they'll understand that too. The players you're talking about, you know, we've got guys that can create something from nothing. You know, we set it up. But yeah, I think what we're actually doing is risk versus reward, right? You're going into it too long. Our kicking game, we need a bit of variation in our kicking game, and we need to be all on the same page when it becomes our kicking game. So, for instance, if we're going high kicks, which we've got a lot of success against the Springboks and Mount Smart, right? Guys are getting up, contestable, getting it back. We're on our game now. It becomes unstructured, which we're really, really good at. When we're not so great at getting those balls back, we're actually putting ourselves under pressure. So now we've got to actually come and change the game plan and say, well, let's go a little bit longer. Okay, you lose a little bit, but you find a bit of space. But what that does is it connects your whole team to say, okay, for the next 2 or so minutes, while we're down there, we're defending to hopefully have the other team kick the ball out and we start again. We're not patient in that.
Don't you think, though, the issue was, though, that when we gave them the ball and they kicked it long, we were back in our own half again? Their long kicking game was remarkable.
Yeah.
The distance they were getting, the fact that, and if we don't win the ball in the air, that's going to be the big, it's evident. Teams are going to go high, it's going to be contestable. You're going to have to dominate the air. When you try and dominate the air, you run the risk of what happened to Will Jordan, the fact all of a sudden he got it slightly wrong and it's a yellow card. All of the teams are doing this. That's the balance, and we're going to have to be very good at it.
That's where we're not dominating. So what happens when you don't dominate the air? It's happened in South Africa in Twickenham. It's happened once again now, but they keep going at it. It's almost like they've got to... Yeah, you're right. The long kicking game is fine, but play a little bit if you need to because you're in our own half. Play a couple of phases and then look for space because that's when the backfield there's a bit more space to then kick long and start again and be really patient about getting our defensive line up to put the other team under pressure or perhaps kick out so then we can go, okay, well, let's start again. Our set piece stuff has been really good. Look at the try we scored, a couple of tries that we broke. So let's start again, but we're getting ourselves in this mentality, we've got to win the air, got to win the air. We don't win the air and we still keep going back to trying to win that battle, which we're not getting reward from.
You mentioned Will Jordan and his yellow card. How many yellow cards for the All Blacks just in the last 2 weeks alone, and they haven't been able to handle it when people have been off the field. The penalty count, 12-4. Between the All Blacks and France as well. You can't win with discipline like that. Or the All Blacks can't, can they? I mean, we saw England pull off something remarkable, but the All Blacks haven't been able to do that.
And that's on Argentina, though. I mean, that's on Argentina's not been able to take advantage of that. Look, you can't have ill discipline. England kicked away 95% of their ball in that game. Their defence was outstanding. Drop goals, but ill discipline is what hurts you. If you give away penalties, this doesn't change. You give away penalties, you give away territory to good teams who are good up front, and you play in the wrong parts of the field, you're going to get beaten. It is so difficult.
Well, France was scrumming for penalties and then taking the kick, Mills.
Yeah, and exactly. And what it done is actually slowed the game down. So the All Blacks came with an upbeat tempo. They wanted us to play it a bit, and they were starting to get rewarded, albeit started to make mistakes. But what it did then, the French loved that. Penalties, go to the line, let's drive. It sort of, they regained their energy. The guys came onto the field. That England, I mean, I talked about adaptability. Man, the way they knew, 10 minutes into the game and you're 14 men down, they're all on the same song. Get down there, drop goal, get down there, points, and what done, it's pressure, right?
Yeah.
Put the Argentinians under pressure, say, man, we're down now by 2 tries, even though they're like 3-pointers. So I think what we're seeing at the moment is an All Black team that are trying to play this upbeat game, and then if they lose a big moment or get penalised, teams that be able to sort of come together, slow the game down a bit and go to set piece. And that's where we kind of lose our patience.
Once again, does that come down to leadership on the field?
No, quite often those are decisions made by individuals in the moment. Holding on the ground, guys missing a clean out, individual execution skills. You lose the contact battle, like you say. Will just doesn't recognise he has to protect the player in the air. Those are all just singular moments of play. It's not leadership because all the players are aware. Yeah. You have to make strong decisions. You can't afford to give away penalties. Look, I know Ethan de Groot will be disappointed with a couple of those scrum penalties. He clearly was frustrated by some interpretation, and that's the other side of it too. Adaptability to refereeing. You will have to do that. We've seen that in other games already in the first weekend.
What do they do at scrum time then? Because we know that these other big teams are going to be looking at that game and that performance on the weekend and the quarterfinal stage, aren't they? And they're going to target the All Blacks there once again, Mills.
I still believe we're still pretty good at scrum time. A couple of knees on the ground. He actually dominated that scrum. He lost his weight there. But there's another one on the other side where we were down inside the French 22. We probably could have won that. They reset. I don't think it's. I think the All Blacks will still go in there with the mindset that we've got a pretty good scrum. It's not like they went in there and they absolutely got dominated. Even on the French stuff, Aaron Smith was able to get him behind and get onto Pomp because of the pressure the All Blacks put on there. So,
you're happy.
Pretty comfortable. I'm pretty comfortable there. They'll learn a lot from that.
Okay, well, I can't believe we've just spent about 3 minutes talking about scrums, but there you have it. JK will not be impressed. This week, the Groove ambassador sat down with a Hollywood superstar, and he just happens to be a Kiwi and an All Blacks fan as well, Taika Waititi.
Taika, good to see you, my brother.
You too, brother.
Hey, you know that the New Zealand Rugby gifted these beautiful benches, beautifully carved, to the nation. But the bench concept's really about, you know, we've got your back. The bench comes on to finish the game. But who's on your bench?
I've been thinking about this, who's on my bench, and, you know, I think, if I'm really honest, like, you know, there are very few people that I would say have longevity in terms of, like, people I will trust or, like, you know, have with me and trust that would have my back or I'd have their back. The people I rely on who are consistently there for me and you know, I always will trust are my daughters and my wife.
And does fame make that harder?
It makes it harder because everyone, you know, there's that old saying, it's like, oh, someone wants a piece of you, and but it's true. You know, when you meet people, you know, like, your instinct is what do they want from me? What do they want to get out of this? And so you know, it makes you a bit standoffish. And,
Oh, yeah, sorry, mate. Come to the rugby.
what do you want out of this? Why are we doing this conversation? What do you want from me?
You've got productions coming up. You've got all these different personalities coming in. You know, how do you get into that performance mode yourself?
Without, it's going to sound arrogant, but like from a very early age, I realised that you can't really rely on anyone else. At the end of the day, it's everything's on you. My instincts have got me quite far. You know,
Trust
to
your gut.
date, trust my gut, and just know that, you know, it's my gut and my instincts have served me really well in the past, and just to keep doing that. And if I'm wrong, and if I screw it up, then the only person I need to blame is myself. And even now, at this point, I don't really care. I don't care about failure anymore. So
Yeah.
I just
What's your best friend, right? When you learn from it.
yeah. I really enjoy it,
Yeah.
and also I just hate work. I just want to retire.
Beautiful. I've never worked, so don't talk to me about that. Mate, we love you. We're so proud of what you do, just because you're just you whenever we see you. So you take a bit of New Zealand with us, so thank you, brother.
I love you. Thank you, brother.
Two absolute Hollywood A-listers. Don't you think JK could star in one of Taika's movies?
JK is an A-lister in the Hollywood?
He's good enough.
He wouldn't stay to script. He'd move on. He wouldn't,
That's
I'll tell
the
you what,
problem.
he's no Jack Reacher. I'll tell you what, he's no Jack Reacher, is he? Hey?
What's he in? Is he in a comedy or... He'll be in an inspirational movie, like a Coach Carter kind of thing.
Yeah, she's big, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing from...
He tried that at the Blues. It didn't go out. Didn't go so
tried
well.
that too. Yeah,
No, he got rid of me. He got rid of me.
Oh, don't go anywhere. This is the breakdown on the road live from Leon. When we come back, we're looking at the rest of the Rugby World Cup. The darlings, Fiji, who came oh so close to getting a victory over one of the top nations in the world. Australia picking up their first win this year under Eddie Jones as well. No mai, hoki mai, welcome back into the breakdown on the road in France. Fiji, heartbreak for Fiji. There were people all around the world that wanted Fiji to upset a Six Nations team, a tier one, top tier team on the weekend, and they came agonisingly close.
I don't think you can get any closer. The number of times they got over the line just didn't manage to get the ball down. And they'll be bitterly disappointed because that was a massive opportunity for them. But thank heavens for the game. Because it was a remarkable game of rugby. The fact both teams were prepared to play. The pressure's now on Fiji. They're more likely going to have to beat Australia to have a chance to get out. And it's one of those things. They could do it, absolutely, given the way and how dangerous they are, Mills. The fact, but you have to have full respect for Wales.
Oh, man.
You know, because they probably went into that game as the underdog.
Coming into this tournament, I was thinking, you know, under everything they're under, you know, the pressure off the field and also the performances, that they'd be the ones that would lose this game. But also brought a different aspect, didn't they? I mean, the
They were
game
good to watch.
Oh man, they shifted the ball. They got up early. 2 great tries that they sort of set up from their set piece to stay in the fight when man, those Fijians were starting to get a lot of sentency into their game. But there was an impressive effort from Wales, and you're right. I mean, they were the darlings going into this tournament now. I mean, they've got to beat Aussie.
The commentary team kept saying as well it was more like Suva than Swansea. So for them to stay in it against a team that is so hard to defend against and in those sort of temperatures is seriously impressive for Wales. They're going to go a long way.
Well, they've given themselves the best opportunity now, which was critical for them and for Warren Gatland and what that group could do. I say I can't be more impressed, but once again I come back to, if you're looking at one part of the game Fiji will be disappointed, was ultimately their discipline hurt them. They conceded a number of penalties, gave Wales field position and territory, and if you continue to give that away to anyone you're playing in this tournament, you're going to get hurt. But now I look forward to when Australia play Fiji, because there'll be a different level of desperation, because they know that their tournament in all likelihood is going to be on the line. But also, if you're Australia, you're now worried about Wales, because Wales looks so very, very good.
Let's talk about Australia then. Australia got a significant win over Georgia, which potentially could have been a banana skin match for them, Mills. But first win of the season, and the confidence that they'll take out of that in their opening game. I mean, Eddie Jones is still trialling players, isn't he, essentially?
And that's where they wanted to start, right? They needed to get that first W to gain some of that confidence, and to go through to the rest of the tournament, sort of, having an upbeat sort of camp. They've got a lot of young players, a young first five that he's a good player, but also the balance in their forwards to say, well, they had to muscle up against the Georgians, right? And that would have been a big area where Eddie Jones will sit back and go, okay, I'm pretty happy with some of my guys, particularly their back row and loose forward trio. So confidence is huge in terms of that first sort of win. And they'll focus. They'll know Fiji are coming. They'll know Fiji are coming, and it's a good chance for them to be able to sort of push on.
They passed their first test, Australia. That's what they needed to do. Was they needed to get their first win against a team which Georgia were always going to be a proposition that was a little bit unknown in terms of what it would be like at a Rugby World Cup, and they were pretty clinical. They did kick a lot, Australia. They were good in the air, and they kicked their goals. And that's something that I think that they were a little bit concerned about, and that's why their selections in terms of Donaldson at fullback, I think that was an important part for them.
Jeff, you were so impressed with the back three from France, weren't you?
Absolutely, particularly the fact their ability off broken play to create for the other players around them, very similar to what South Africa use, is the fact the moment you make a mistake, their ability, their speed and athleticism on their feet, it puts you under pressure. Look, they didn't use them a lot, but when they were involved in the game, it certainly stressed their defensive line.
Oh, their commitment too, really. I mean, they've got plenty of speed. One moment there, Villiers ran right across the whole field and then found a hole. So they've got plenty of speed, plenty of commitment. That ball that sort of was bouncing between Bowden and himself, and then they scored off that. What they do is when they're caught upon in moments is that they actually win and win those sort of bigger moments for their sides. I mean, we've got X-factor wingers, don't get me wrong, but the fact that these guys stay in it, they're very impressive, and they don't mind making a few mistakes here and there.
You can't see the pressure getting to this team. They seem like they can handle
solid,
it, right?
Yeah, they do. They do seem very solid. They seem composed, and that's. You spoke about it last couple of years in the 18 months, even some of these players coming through the under-20s, they've played for a very long time. You got to remember also, they lost their star first five, and the way they've sort of been able to adapt and go on, that's built upon, I suppose, confidence leading into the tournament, and confidence was leading into the tournament from 18 months ago.
Well, the North beat the Southern Hemisphere 3-2 over the weekend. If you look at some of these results, a big one for the Southern Hemisphere in the Rugby Championship, though, was South Africa over Scotland, Jeff. The defending world champions. What did you see from this team? Some teams are just good at Rugby World Cup time, aren't they, and playing with their DNA. They played their best game 2 weeks ago. Did you see an improvement on that?
No, they suffocated Scotland once again. I didn't see an improvement because they did exactly what they did to the All Blacks, is the fact that what they just put under pressure. Their kicking game was really on point, but their defensive line, Scotland have been one of the better teams over the last 2 years in terms of using the ball, finding space. We saw against France a few weeks ago. They got behind and were able to find some opportunities on the edges. They didn't get that against the Springboks. They kept coming. Finn Russell was under all sorts of pressure all day, whether it was creating or whether trying to kick. It was relentless. And then they came on, and guess where they were dominant? up front at scrum time. So it gave Scotland no opportunity to get themselves back into the game. Look, it was 6-3 at half time, but it seemed as though there was only one team out there. They 100% stuck to what they're good at, and ultimately it was too much for Scotland.
No, and they executed what they're very, very good at. I mean, you put Finn Russell under pressure. That's all they done. Every time he had a kick, there was a couple of guys on him. They sort of gave him a couple of nudges. They wore him out. Even into the fact that he became sort of, you know, tired of the sort of and fatigued from thinking, oh, who's coming at me? And then they bring on some big boys to really, you know, star them of possession, but also great over the ball. And I think between them and the French sides, because they're so big and solid, they've got very good execution in terms of getting over the ball. If you get a little bit isolated, they're right in there, and so they're comfortable with where they're at. The South Africans are comfortable with their game plan, and everyone just sort of seems to be on the same page. I'm a bit sort of worried a little bit about the South Africans because there is that X factor, and Lebok is running. He is starting to really get there. I think it's probably momentum because he's in the driver's seat, and I think between him and one of the at the back, they've got some great X factor players.
I still think they'll be nervous about goal kicking when Faf de Klerk is having to take shots at goal for them.
That's when you miss Andre Pollard.
Well, that's when you miss Pollard. And don't get me wrong, I think Lebok's doing an outstanding job in understanding the role he has to play, but a part of that is kicking the points and taking their threes. And remembering the first half, it was 6-3 at half time. It wasn't like they were dominating this game.
Also in this pool, of course, is Ireland. They had a rather easy first up encounter. I mean, how much can you read into that big win over Romania, Jeff?
Clinical, accurate. Their structures were really, really good. They looked sharp. They went into that game. Look, to score 80 at a World Cup's not easy to do because teams come in prepared, fit and physical, but they manipulate space so well. They keep guys on the edges and they know how to get the ball to them. They are going to be so difficult.
Will they play like that against these big teams?
Oh, absolutely, they have to, because that's their strength, and they've shown they can do that. I mean, this is the team, you know, I think right now, they are probably the best structured attacking team in the competition and in the world, the way that they play, and they've mastered their ability to find space.
And manipulation, really, you know, they're solid in that aspect, and the fact that, I mean, it could easily be a game where they've sort of warmed into the tournament, but they didn't. You know, they've gone out there. They had a nice, awesome, great game plan in terms of the analysis that they sort of seen the opportunities, and then to go out there and execute the manipulation and find space and beat them by that much. That's solid. That's why they're number one. You know, because they're all on the same page. You're right. They do find a bit of space, and they have got a good balance in terms of, you know, getting their kicking game right as well. So the big thing is can they do it? Will they be allowed to do that sort of stuff against bigger teams? I think they've got the team to absolutely manipulate other teams as well.
So do you put a line through Scotland right now then? Because that first game against South Africa was so important. They didn't want to, and they couldn't get in the game.
But there's desperation now from them because they know their tournament's going to be on the line when they come up against Ireland. So no, I don't put a line through them. It's the fact that South Africa did it to us 2 weeks ago. They can do it to so many teams. They've done it to Australia, Argentina. That's their DNA. That's why they're so good at what they do at Rugby World Cups.
England is someone who probably elevated their status considering all they have been through since changing their coach in 12 months, Mills. I mean, to play with 14 men for 75 minutes and to beat them 27-10 against a top nation, against Argentina.
This isn't just any team. This is an Argentinian side who are physical. You know, they've brought a lot of confidence coming into this tournament after beating, you know, the Wallabies, and super impressed. This is exactly everything that happened in that game in terms of the red card, even that in itself, what that does to their morale and, you know, their confidence is just huge, because now, you know, they went into it 10 minutes in, hey, we're going to play this totally different, get down there, okay, let's points, put the pressure back on the Argentinians, and that display, 27 points off one guy, but this is
not even their regular first choice 10. You have to think they're without two of their best players as well.
They've got some things to take away from this game, England, in terms of what do they do going forward, particularly selection-wise. But what they were really clever at is the fact they went zero rucks, zero defenders at the ruck. very early on, and Argentina continued to try and play, and then they were very selective about going in and trying to steal the ball, and they got so many penalties for the fact that Argentina missed clean-outs, the fact they were trying to use possession. The defence was outstanding. They set a marker for where they are in this tournament.
So they're real contenders now for the World Cup. No one was talking about them coming into this tournament.
No way anyone was talking to them because they just didn't show anything. And that's why I said everything that happened, even the red card, which I don't think that was a red card. I mean, I just, but if that didn't happen, I don't know whether they possibly could have won. They almost went into, hey, we're going to go into this game plan. Everything's against us. No one's picking us to win. It even gave them even more edge to come out and actually, perform the way they did.
Not yet.
No, you're not putting them in that category.
I'm not going to put them in that category right now.
Too early.
Too early for that. It's round one. Come on. Let's not get carried away.
So tough,
it's the first game.
He's so tough.
It's the first game.
Well, he won't put England in the finals of the Rugby World Cup category. There were finals back home as well in New Zealand. It's the Farah Palmer Cup Premiership and Championship. We'll be talking about that right after this. Yeah, wonderful initiative for the New Zealand Rugby Awards later on this year. Make sure you jump online and you nominate your community heroes. Right, Namibia, 7-day turnaround for the All Blacks before the second test. Of course, they need to bounce back. They need to make a statement before this one. So what do they do with the 23? Ian Foster said a couple of days ago that he is going to continue with the rest and rotation. But without 4 players due to injury, there was only about 9 players that didn't play in this test match. So others are going to have to back up. Who will play this game from that top team? And will Ethan Blackadder jump straight off the plane on Monday? 4 days later, will we see Ethan Blackadder play?
I had a random thought yesterday, Mills. All right, so there's 4 that are injured.
Yes.
They're probably starters, right? So I'd like to see the group that's got the responsibility to finish games, big test matches, actually get some quality time together. The ones who might be on the bench for the big games and combine with the other players who are in the squad, it's get as many of those guys working together so they understand each other, get the combinations, get them starting against Namibia, play a good 60 minutes together, see whether or not we can't build some cohesiveness.
So who's on that bench that's them starting?
Well, I think for me, really, the big one is where Damien McKenzie sits. Does he start at 10 to then move back to fullback, to allow them to possibly, consider him coming off the bench? Because we haven't seen him at all being selected off the bench. So I think, his selection in terms of that, I think Richie Mo'unga, stays in it, whether it's off the bench or not. You keep your sort of your playmaker involved. The likes of Roygaard, do we actually start Roygaard? Just to see that. I think you have got a good point there. The guys that will potentially finish the game are possibly more important, and that's probably in the the 9-10s and out the back.
It's going to be a long week for the All Blacks.
It is.
It's going to be a long week to get back on the field, right?
Yeah, it is going to be a long week, but I think it'll be a good week as well. Once they park that game, start to get things right, they've got to actually hone down on the goal that they want to get from this. Yeah, okay, winning is obviously the big one, and they shouldn't have any problems. But for the bigger picture down the road, it's more about that mental side of things and how they're going to end up getting that confidence back before the quarterfinals.
Does Ethan play?
I'd like to think so. If
23 or 15?
No, probably off the bench. He just gets it off the bench. That would be where I expect him to get some responsibilities.
So what does the loose forward trio look like then? Because when you think of the injuries to Shannon Frizzell and to Sam Cane, who's playing?
It's a great question.
This is the scenarios that are going to be going on in the All Blacks right now.
I think Luke Jacobson maybe could give Artie Savia a rest, and Dalton Popoli could start at 7. And I mean they've got to look at some options. There's no doubt about that. These are tough question marks, and we don't know where some of these players are at in terms of coming back. But it's a big week for them in terms of just getting some confidence and getting back out there.
JK and Carlton Arna were off to get espresso. Croissants, is it for you two, or baguettes?
My numbers on croissants are high already.
How many?
My number
already. I've only been here 5 days. I'm almost in double figures.
Don't even look at me, mate. I need a salad somehow. I'll eat that leaf.
Make sure you can still do the button up on that working style.
No, these are all good.
Jacket.
They're all good. Look at that.
By the end of the tournament. That is us done and dusted for the breakdown on the road, live from Leon. We'll be back in our new time slot of Tuesday nights during the Rugby World Cup in a week's time. We'll see you soon. And do not forget that it is Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori Language Week.
As we kick off the 10th edition of rugby's biggest prize, the World Cup. The opening ceremony was something to behold. Here's the cross kick. Waiting is Mark Talia. Needs a good bounce.
And England will have silenced some of their critics as they win the opening Pool D match of the 2023 Rugby World Cup.
It has been Donaldson's day here in Paris.
A fine opening performance from Italy.
Job emphatically done for Ireland. It has been a tsunami of green flowing towards the Oaks try line.
It has been a wonderful occasion, history made in Toulouse.
South Africa start off their 2023 Rugby World Cup with a victory over Scotland.
Will survive. They were hanging on the precipice.
The Rugby World Cup 23 has not disappointed.